Hello, and welcome to our first founder AMA for dVIN Labs. I should be live on both YouTube and Twitter right now. I'm I'm working all of that out as we speak. Give me a half a second, and we're just getting the pieces together. Here we go. Oh, there! Look, there we are. We're live on. We're live on Twitter. Hello, everybody. I'm going to just put a big hello in the. So I'm here for the AMA. So I'm also going to just go and see where we are on YouTube right now. Doesn't look like we're live on YouTube. That's okay. I think we're okay if we're just here in Twitter or X. I guess we'll just call it X now. So let me let's see. All right. Well, maybe I'm only supposed to be live on X. That's all fine. No worries. I'm going to say here. So it looks like we've got a few viewers. I've got a couple of questions that people sent in advance. So I'm going to go through those first. But please feel free if you've got questions for the AMA, just put them in the chat. But first, I'll go through a couple of questions that people had sent in earlier. So the first is, what is the competitive advantage of VIN coin? What do you have compared to your competitors about features such as security, scalability, community development? Do you think it is finished or it needs to be further developed? Well, look, let me start by saying, nothing's ever finished in technology. There's always going to be new things to do, new features to add, and new places to go. And when we think about dVIN as an ecosystem and as a protocol, I think we've barely scratched the surface. So let's talk about VinCoin, and then let's talk about what we're doing. So, when you think about the dVIN ecosystem, I like to think of it in like 4 or 5 or 6 different buckets, right? The first bucket that everyone always thinks of when you think about tokenizing collectibles or tokenizing investment grade or fine wine is authenticity. How can you use tokenization to prove authenticity or to guarantee authenticity? That's one piece of what we do. Our intention is not to create the forever solution for that, because honestly, there's new technology that's being built every day. We just did this great Bonhams auction of the first barrel from the Bhutan Wine Company. And for that auction, we used some unbottled tech called dust identity. Really, really cool technology. It's they used crushed industrial diamonds to create a unique physical signature on a physical item. And so the technology was actually developed to combat fraud and counterfeit in military aircraft parts, believe it or not. They use this dust technology to ensure that the same military aircraft part that showed up at the factory was the one that was created, or the one that showed up at the Air Force Base was the one that was created at the factory. Now, obviously, that was a very expensive, incredibly secure system, and it saved the not only the manufacturers of these parts, but also the federal government in the U.S. a lot of money, and probably saved some lives. Now, what they've done over the course of the last couple of years is they've made it much more approachable and affordable for wine. So, with the Bhutan Wine Company, there is this crushed industrial diamond that is on each individual bottle of wine. It's hard to find, but you can find it and scan it and know that that particular bottle is authentic. Now, is crushed industrial diamonds the right thing for every bottle in the world? Probably not, right? It's great for very, very expensive investment grade wine. But if you look at more approachable wines, you might need something. More more affordable. And so, from our perspective, what we're building in that ecosystem, or in the dVIN protocol, in the dVIN ecosystem around authentication, is really more like a marketplace where you can have Dust and you can have Distinct, which is a really cool company making smart ink, or any one of 50 other different on-bottle security, anti-fraud, anti-counterfeit products. But dVIN protocol is the source of truth for that. And then you can really move through a bunch of different areas. There's RWA, real world assets, putting real world assets on chain. And we think that there's a whole ecosystem to be built around that. There's DeFi, which is creating a way for not only using tokenized wine, being able to trade in tokenized wine easily and quickly, rather than having to use banks and expensive international transfers that are risky and expensive, using on-chain transactions for wine sales around the world. We think that's a really interesting use of DeFi. Also, lending. We've talked a lot recently about lending, using wine as collateral for wineries or negociants or importers or distributors to borrow against. And then there's business intelligence. There's dPIN, using dPIN to track wines and to guarantee provenance from grape to glass, but from the winery all the way through to the consumer. And then on to loyalty programs and customer acquisition. There's really a bunch of different ecosystems that we're building on the protocol, and so we've got a lot of places to go. The question kind of came back to the competitive advantage of VINcoin, and what are we doing compared to our competitors? And really, I think we're the only folks out there that are trying to build an ecosystem play. Everyone else that we've looked at as a potential competitor is more likely a partner in the future, more likely someone that we can provide access to the protocol that will just make everyone's business easier, smoother, more profitable. So that's what I think the competitive advantage of VINcoin is. And over time, we think VINcoin has not just the applications that I talked about, but probably many others. So hopefully that answered your question. Thanks for that. I'm going to move on to the next question in the AMA. Smart contracts are prone to failures, and many projects have fallen victim to them, costing users money and discrediting the project. How reliable and secure are your smart contracts, and if you audited them through a third party? We're actually in that process today. So we've been really fortunate in that we've had really great partners, working closely in the beginning, working closely with with a really great partner who helped us develop our first round of smart contracts. More recently, we've been working with the Solana Labs and the Solana Foundation. As some of you know, like we're a grant recipient from the Solana Foundation. We've worked really closely with that organization. That's helped us to make sure that not only are we using smart contracts efficiently, but we're also using the most secure, best technology in developing our smart contracts. And we're working with Solana Labs to kind of audit our smart contract infrastructure. So that's the quick answer. The slightly longer answer is this. Smart contracts are for purely digital assets and for purely digital transactions are sometimes risky. It's true. We've heard of some projects that have, especially early projects early on in EVM or even in SVM, have had issues with smart contracts not being properly audited and having exploits. For wine, it's a little bit of a different story because using when we talk about smart contracts for wine projects, if it's a pure digital asset and you can exploit the smart contract, then all of a sudden you can make a lot of money. You can take possession of that digital asset and then sell it or lend against it or do whatever. With wine, it's a little bit different. The smart contracts that we use for and the dVIN protocol, and especially the smart contracts that we use for Digital Corks, are really just a deed of ownership or a digital product passport for an actual physical good, right? There's a physical thing that is that backs up the 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 smart contract. So when you think about it, that smart contract, it needs to be enforceable by law and it needs to work like software. But it also has kind of a backup, right? Like if your smart contract, if your digital cork is stolen, it's going to be pretty difficult for whoever steals it to actually take possession of the wine, right? Most criminals, they don't want to put their shipping address in their against their stolen proceeds. There will always be a way, because we're dealing with a physical good, there will always be a way for us to adjudicate fraud, adjudicate theft by having the ability to actually have, because for the most part, we'll have custody, or someone in the ecosystem is going to have custody of the physical asset. We'll be able to adjudicate that fraud. So we still need to work out a bunch of different ways to do that. And obviously, most important and the best way to do it is to make sure that the smart contracts and everything that interacts with them is safe and secure. But at the end of the day, because of the custody factor of the physical asset, because it's not just a pure digital asset, there really is there's kind of an added safety feature that doesn't come with most smart contracts that are just digital assets. Really good question. Thank you very much. Token burning is the best thing to control token price and reduce supply. Do you have any plan to burn tokens? Really great question. We get that question a lot. So anyone who's looked at our white paper knows that when we launched the trading platform, we have actually a really great system for that for the first 2 years. So when the trading platform launches, And there will be many trading platforms for trading investment grade wine. We're putting about $150 million worth of investment grade wine on chain with the ability to be able to trade it using these trading platforms. Once those are launched, the fees get split up into three parts, really. They're about the lion's share of the fee goes to the channel partner, kind of the storefront, let's say. A small part of the fee goes back to the winemaker, so the winemaker participates in secondary market trades. That's the first time they'll ever be able to do that, and it's very exciting for wineries. And then we get a piece of a small piece of the trading fees as well. So for every bottle that trades, about 1%, there's a 1% fee that's associated with that trade, and we're taking a piece of that, and the winery's taking a piece of it. So both our piece and the winery's piece both get paid in VIN coin. So there will be buy pressure on VIN coin every time a bottle trades on any of our trading platforms. And for all of the dVIN fees, a portion of those will be burned. So there's a scale. I'll be able to share that with the white paper, but a portion of the fees for every trade, basically every time a bottle of wine trades on any platform anywhere in the world, there will be a burn mechanism for part of the VIN coin fees. So yeah, we're really working on creating some deflationary aspects to VIN coin and to the trading markets. Looks like we have one more question. What do you think about NFT and DeFi association explosion that is causing so much interest in the world? How does your project leverage and take advantage of this reality? Look, it's kind of why we got started in this in the beginning. People started talking about NFTs, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago. I guess 2021 was when there was a big surge in NFTs, and people were doing, wine NFTs even back then, and we sort of looked at it and we thought that's pretty interesting. Can we use an NFT as a deed of ownership for a bottle of wine, right? I mean, so there's a reason why wine hasn't enjoyed the same benefits as other asset classes. The main one is that wine doesn't have a deed of ownership. Nearly every other asset that you own or that you trade has a deed of ownership. Your house, your car, certainly any stocks or bonds, gold, all of those things have a deed of ownership. Some of them have like a ledger at the local real estate office. Some of them it's a pink slip that you keep in your car. For stocks and bonds, those deeds of ownership are registered at the NASDAQ or the S&P or the Dow Jones. So, but that deed of ownership is what turns it into a real asset, right? Being able to say that you own it lets you do things like borrow against it, right? Like if you didn't have a deed of ownership for your house, you wouldn't be able to borrow against it, or for your car, you wouldn't be able to get a car loan. It also lets you insure it, right? You need to have a deed of ownership in order to insure your house or insure your car. It's one of the reasons that it's so difficult to get insurance for wine, because how do you know that it's there without a deed of ownership? How do you know who owns that bottle? And so, an individual small bottle of wine is one thing, but if you have 10,000 of those bottles or 1,000,000 of those bottles, how can you insure it? How can you borrow against it? How do you know who owns it? And so having that deed of ownership has always been like a really important thing. But there's two reasons why that's been difficult. Before the blockchain, you couldn't really do it, right? It was too expensive. How much would it cost to create a deed of ownership for a bottle of wine if you were doing it the same way you did it with real estate or the same way you do it with a car? Like, it's expensive. It would cost, $50 or $100, or, in the case of a house, sometimes, a deed is $1,200. Like, it's expensive to have that done. Well, with blockchain, it's super, super cheap. We can create a deed of ownership for a bottle of wine for a penny. Or less than a penny in some cases. So and it can be quick and easy. very, very low cost. So that's one important piece. The second important piece is cross-border, is the ability for that deed of ownership to work in multiple jurisdictions, right? So typically, if you have a car, then that deed of ownership is valuable in the state where you bought the car, or maybe even in the United States. But if you were to take that car and ship it to Spain, you would need to get a new deed of ownership for the car, right? Your house is the same way, right? Your house has a deed of ownership, but that deed of ownership is really limited to it's useful in the United States or in the state of California or the state of New York, but it's not really useful globally. Well, wine, as it turns out, moves across border an awful lot. So, making having a deed of ownership that can work in multiple jurisdictions around the world is it's necessary. It's a requirement. But again, that was almost nearly impossible to do without blockchain. But now that we can use the blockchain for that, it really creates the ability to turn a bottle of wine from being a possession into being an asset. And an asset is something that you can have a claim over. You can get insurance. You can borrow against it. You can use it like any other asset. And so that's what's super, super exciting for us. And the more that we start seeing we see a lot of great new lending projects, for example, being able to borrow against your NFTs or borrow against your crypto. Those are all really interesting. And the explosion of interest in that has really led us to be able to start looking for new opportunities inside of wine. And so pretty excited about that. So I'm a lot of questions here. It is 5:25. We're kind of reaching the end of the time. I'm going to give it another couple of minutes. If anybody has any last questions, you can do it live in the Twitter feed. While we're waiting for that, I'm just going to say thank you to everybody that's watching. Thanks for supporting dVIN Labs. We've got a lot of really exciting things coming. If you haven't played around with Bacchus yet, you really should. So go to Bacchus_dVIN on Twitter. If you haven't looked at Bacchus or looked at the Wine Guy on Telegram yet, I think you can find that link on the website, or certainly you can find it somewhere in our Twitter feed. Feel free to DM me if you need a new link. But there's really fun products coming down the pike really over the course of the next I don't know, week to 2 weeks to 3 weeks. You're going to start seeing really exciting stuff coming out of dVIN Labs. So thanks again. Really appreciate everybody's time. This has been a really fun AMA. We're going to start doing these every couple of weeks. So feel free to send in your questions for next time in advance. Again, I'm Dave Garrett, co-founder of dVIN Labs. This has been an Ask Me Anything session, our very first one. And we've got more coming soon. So thank you very much. Goodbye, everybody.